Hi, I'm Kayla Hathaway, a partner here at Simpatico Studios. Simpatico is a platform dedicated to cultivating conversations and actions on complex social issues with professionals all around the world. On the Climate EDU channel, I interview academics about university programs, careers, research, internships, and published literature like books and papers. If you're interested in being a guest, we'd love to hear from you. And now, on to today's show. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Climate EDU. I am your host, Kayla Hathaway, and today I'm joined by Nikki Cooley. Nikki is of the Dene Nation of the Towering House clan, born for the Reed People clan, maternal grandfathers of the Water That Flows Together clan, and paternal grandfathers of the Many Goats clan. As the ITEP's climate change program co-manager, she works with the tribes on climate change adaptation, mitigation, and resilience plans. In this episode, learn about the Institute for Tribal Environmental Professionals and the ways in which they support tribal and indigenous communities and environmental cultural resource managers on addressing climate change impacts. Nikki, thank you so much for joining me today. How are you doing?
Yes, I'm doing very well. I'm happy to join all of you today. So, yeah, I'm doing really well. Thank you.
I'm glad to hear that things are well, all things considered, with today's events.
Yes, yes.
Okay, so just jumping right on into it, can you go ahead and give us a little bit of a background of what the ITEP program is and what it is you guys do?
Sure. Again, like Kayla said, my name is Nikki Cooley. I come from the House clan, born for the Reed people, and I come from the Diné Navajo people, and I live in Arizona, Flagstaff, Arizona, near the Sacred Peaks. And I work at the Institute for Tribal Environmental Professionals. For short, it's ITEP or ITEP. And I, along with my co-manager Karen Cazzetto, we co-manage the Tribes and Climate Change Program. This program is specifically created in 2009 to help federally recognized tribes and also other non-federally recognized tribes and indigenous communities to I guess build their capacity in tribal climate change adaptation planning. So creating specific documents that talk about the climate impacts to not only their lands but also their culture, their language, their ceremonial ways of life. Um, so we want to be kind of that one-stop shop to help tribes uh, get that assistance so they can build a really comprehensive, holistic document that represents their tribe and people correctly and appropriately. So we provide resources, the latest scientific information, but also we provide assistance, direct assistance in helping them either write it, come up with a plan, reviewing documents, but also sharing the different resources that they otherwise don't have time for or have the capacity for. So our program has been around, like I said, since 2009, and we're primarily funded by the Bureau of Indian Affairs Tribal Resilience Program, but we do work with individual tribes, individual projects.
And getting onto the topic of climate change, for those who may not be aware, how are indigenous communities or tribal communities more dramatically impacted by the effects of climate change?
Kayla, that's a really good question. How are tribes and indigenous communities um, feeling or experiencing the impacts of climate change differently? Not only differently, but perhaps uniquely, disproportionately. If you look at where tribes and indigenous communities are, most of these communities are in rural areas that are more than 30 minutes away to the nearest emergency service, grocery store, a gas station, maybe even good Wi-Fi. So when you think about these um, services that tribes lack, um, they don't. If there's a big drought, a wildfire, flooding, um, anything like that happens, tribes are less likely to respond that quickly to help people, to help those in need the most. So vulnerable populations such as our elders, um, low income households who don't have adequate resources such as a vehicle or even a telephone, a cell phone, the bandwidth to even respond to those emergencies. But also, if you look at a lot of these tribal and indigenous communities, you'll see that they're largely reliant on the traditional or old ways of life. Um,
Mm.
whether it's raising cattle, sheep, and goats, which they may use for clothing for their to make clothing, wool for rugs and baskets, which in turn they sell, and that's part of their economics, their local economics. But also they use it for food, and also many tribes still grow or rely on crops or plants, wild plants that grow in the forests alongside riparian areas. And if these are depleted, heavily depleted, or even if they go away, their ways of life change significantly, not only because they can't feed themselves, they can't feed their families, but also the spiritual and mental impacts is just as devastating as losing your house to a wildfire.
And so then with ITEP, so how is ITEP supporting these tribal and indigenous environmental and cultural resource managers on addressing climate change impacts to help these kinds of communities?
So ITEP, we are a one-stop shop. As I said before, we provide those resources that are online, but also on paper, but also even not just paper documents, but also people. These tribes often have staff that are managing departments, multiple departments, and multiple projects that can contain, water, mining, and even or natural resources. And then also you throw climate change in the mix there. They're heavily overwhelmed. So what we want to do at ITP at ITEP is to make sure that they know that they're not alone in the planning process, because they're often tasked with this extra task of writing a climate change adaptation plan or a tribal hazard mitigation plan. And so we want to be there to help them, to bring people from the federal, nonprofit, and academic areas that can actually provide the science, maybe provide some assistance in the writing of the plan. But also, we tell them, tribes out there have done these projects, have written these plans, so you don't have to start from scratch. You can look at their adaptation plan or mitigation plan and kind of use that as a template to write their plan. There may be similar projects that they are working on. So, for example, if the Confederated Salish and Kootenai tribe is writing a plan on forests and trees. Hold on, can you hear my dogs?
Yeah, it's okay though.
Gosh, let me get them out really quick. This is,
Okay.
I'm so sorry, I thought they were outside.
Oh no, no worries at all. Okay. Brief intermission. Dogs are always welcome here at Simpatico. And go quickly. was
home
just
and
saying, like, pets are always welcome.
yes, the mailmen come and they just go crazy, and I told my husband to leave them outside, but anyways, um, let me
Anyways, so the plans, making plans and like templates so that way sound like communities are able to go and repurpose those templates for future projects and like management, right?
yes, yes, exactly. So they can rely on neighboring tribes or even tribes across the country that could be doing a similar project or has done a similar project, um, that they can focus on. But also, we try to tell tribes, you don't have to start from scratch. Perhaps they have an existing environmental management plan. They can actually insert climate change language, climate change strategies into.
And do you have any examples of like what a previous plan might have looked like and then just tweaking it for like climate adaptation?
Sure. So I worked briefly with the Red Cliff Band of Chippewa Indians. They are on Lake Superior, on the shores of Lake Superior,
Okay.
and they had a big flood event. I think a 500-year flood event that happened in 2017, I believe 2016, where they had a major rain event that actually took out some roads. It took out
Oh man.
campgrounds where actually people that were camping out floated away, and actually a few people unfortunately lost their lives. But also, power was out. There was a lot of folks that relied heavily on that electricity for breathing machines, but also to provide warmth and whatnot. So they had this huge dilemma, but also the roads was one of the main things that they were really worried about, because that's you're going to and from the hospital,
Yeah.
to and from the grocery store, or to even get propane to provide heating for your home. And so, what the transportation department actually did, was insert climate change in there, and how these flood events heavily impacted not only the tribe, but the neighboring communities that relied heavily on maybe some of the tribal economics that were there. They worked for the tribe, but also, they couldn't get an ambulance from that small community to a major city like Duluth, Minnesota, where there was better access to health care.
Mhm.
So that's one example I always like to mention.
And so, like with the like transformation of policy, so it sounds like in documentation it'd be like adapting like roads for one, like more access and just kind of having a better like preparation in case of like needing of evacuation, if I'm assuming correctly.
That is yeah, that's absolutely correct. Yes, and I did fail to mention that the tribe pretty much actually increased the size of their culverts. And so heavy water would be able to more water would be able to flow through, rather than just completely destroy a road. But also, they improved upon their emergency plan, evacuation plan. I don't, I can't remember what they did, but I think, for example, they may have said, "Hey, if something goes wrong, the high school gymnasium would be a good place to go to, because they have backup generators there that can provide power and a place for people to retreat to in a time of that kind of event." So yes.
And so we see like kind of segueing into like just leadership roles with like tribal indigenous communities, like taking from that and moving forward in the conversation. We see a lot of discourse, especially online, about learning from tribal and indigenous leaders and for how we should take care of the land and adapt for climate. And so my question to you is like, in what ways currently are tribal and indigenous communities leading the way in climate adaptation that you've been seeing?
Well, first I have to say that my good friend and my elders from the Dana Otham Nation, down in southern Arizona. To people can say Tohono O'odham. He said tribes have always adapted, whether it's been forced upon us or just for the basic fact of survival. But now we have to act even faster. And so tribes are really, I guess, altering how they manage the land, and they're more going towards caring for the land. They're kind of
Mm.
going back to the old ways. So, for example, the Swinomish tribe up in the northwest on the Puget Sound are actually recreating these clam gardens
Ooh.
that their people used to use to grow, and then they harvest these clams for their foods, but also for ceremonial purposes, economic purposes. And so they're in their heavy experimentation stage right now to rebuild these clam gardens, because a lot of their shorelines are actually going away because of the rising sea levels.
Mm.
Rising water levels is heavily washing away, some of their clam harvesting areas and whatnot. So they're going back to the old ways, and and then kind of mixing, infusing that with Western knowledge. So there's a bridge between the Western and traditional knowledge, instead of heavily relying on or even depending on Western knowledge to tell them how to take care of the land, right?
Yeah.
So when the US government started managing uh the Native American people of the United States, they were often told this is how you should actually take care of your land. For example, one of the most popular examples is fire. So I used to work with a Cherokee tribe in North Carolina, and they used to burn their forests every year. And they had a burn schedule, a calendar, where they worked with the entire community to set fire to the forests, but not and they did it so often that it wasn't drastic to the landscape. And my good friend who has passed on, Jerry Wolf, said this is how we used to clean under the understory, under the trees. You burn all the dead wood, the dead trees and plants, and then make way for new ones to come up and grow. And also, there's the American chestnut has is now extinct due to the foreign pest diseases that were brought over from Europe, and that is in big part due to fire suppression. So the U.S. Forest Service, U.S. federal government said fire is bad. You cannot burn anymore, and so in doing so, they have created this problem that we are having today: is these catastrophic wildfires in areas that used to see regular burning practices. And those burning practices are actually coming back. If you look to the Karuk and the Yurok tribes in Northern California, or the Pomo tribe in Southern California, they're bringing these burning practices back, which include burning schedules, burning a certain time of the year, um, not just waiting for fire season to come around, but also bringing prayer and education back into the fold.
Yeah, I've been hearing, so being a local in California, I was just trying not to laugh at like, oh, fire season. It's like, yeah, no, there's a definite fire season, that is for sure.
Yes.
Um, and I have been hearing a little bit about, like more like controlled burns, like being brought in, and like just more like practiced. And I'm feeling reassured to hear that that's happening both in Northern and Southern California, because there's a whole lot that could be done to or should be done, especially like policy and then just action and communication to
Mhm.
try to get some control over the crazy wildfires we get here.
Yeah, for sure.
hmm And so before we go ahead and wrap up, my final question that I have for you today, going back to like ITEP, ITEP, like this focus is it's like as a tribal and indigenous person yourself, how important is like ITEP like to you and like serving tribes, and like what do you see ITEP like? in the next year or so, and how they are helping tribal and indigenous communities.
Thank you so much for that question. And I'll start out with the fact that I am an indigenous person that grew up on the Navajo reservation. I grew up with my great grandparents, my grandparents, and I'm sorry, my eyes are watering.
Oh, you're okay.
I don't know why. I'm trying to blink through it. Okay, there we go. And so growing up with my elders, I grew up without running water, without electricity, and this is the main point in my story because it really taught me the value of these resources that I am so privileged to have easy access to in where I live in Flagstaff. And also, my parents still live on the reservation and they don't have running water, but they have better access to water than other folks where their wells have dried up and they don't have a reliable vehicle to haul water. And I grew up with my elders learning that we would always have to take care of our land and to have a reciprocal relationship. And my work is infused with all of those teachings, those prayers, those ways of doing and in regards to taking care of the land, but and also taking care of your relative, your neighbor. And I really make that a big part of my work because, we work with tribes across the country, indigenous communities that are either really traditional or they're walking the line between traditional and Western. And we do have people from different faiths, but the one end goal is that I hear from working with these communities, whether it's in Alaska, Maine, California, in Mississippi, Oklahoma, is that they want the tribe's culture and language and ways of life to survive because that is part of the tribe's identity. And without that identity, we're just like everyone else. We meaning that they don't have a sense of place, they don't have a sense of identity. And so ITEP is our ITEP is really kind of at the forefront and has been at the forefront since ITEP was actually created in 1993 by a Hopi man and his colleague from NAU to build that capacity for tribes to do the work themselves rather than relying on non-native, non-indigenous people. And so I see ITEP continuing that work that is so vital to a lot of communities who rely on our resources, on our expertise, and so they don't have to do all the work themselves. They don't have to feel alone. And a lot of the tribes and indigenous communities actually look to us in a time of stress, depending on which administration it doesn't believe in climate change and is trying to take away funding to address those impacts, that they look to ITEP for their knowledge and for their strength. And so we stand beside them and we work for tribes. And so I hope that we'll continue that legacy long into the future. And especially with climate change becoming an even more trending topic. It's
Yeah.
always been trending for a lot of people, but for us, it's vital that we address it. It's critical because our identity is so ingrained in the environment, in the earth, in the trees, the animals, and so on. So that's where I see ITEP continuing their work and their partnerships with tribes and other respective partners. So
Well, we're hitting our time for today, Nikki, but thank you so much for joining us on Simpatico today and giving us an introduction to ITEP. Provided schedules work, I would love to have you back on to get into more specific project details or events or educational discussions. I'm gonna go ahead and roll the end credits here, and we'll be right back. we're back. So this isn't part of the recorded thing, but just like kind of chit chatting. But
Oh, good.
yeah, no, I was like trying to go through. I'm like, okay, like I want to make sure I'm asking the questions you sent, but I didn't want to like just be like, like droning and like be like reading them. Like, okay, like so I'm glad that you felt that the way I phrased them was useful.
Yes, very much so. And Kayla, I would love to come back anytime. Now I know what how you work, and it's really well done. I've been watching some of the videos on Simpatico, but also
Hey.
yeah, I love it. You do such a good job, and I'm very skeptical of people who ask for these types of interviews because often sometimes people aren't too prepared, and so this
Mm.
makes it easier for us, to tell our story, and but also I can recommend people.
Oh yeah.
I Yeah, I don't mean to brag, but I know a lot of people that can provide good content.
Yeah, no, like if there's anyone that you think like would like to come on anytime, feel free to like email. Like we can also do panels. So we can have
Mhm.
up to, I think we can do up to like 4 or 5 with our, like, I know with StreamYard we can go up to like 9, like what we're in right
Mhm.
now, if I remember
Yeah.
correctly. So I think we can do like panels, and then there's like webinar things, or there's just stuff like this. And
Okay.
yeah, so basically, we are here to platform you and to
Okay.
get like your information and content out there. So if there's like a time like you're like, oh, I just there's this thing that's really important, and be like, Kayla, there's this thing that's really important. I'll be like, okay, when are you available? Like,
Got
um,
it.
yeah. So like you can message me anytime. And yeah, like I definitely want to like get into like stuff like deep dive into some projects that ITEP has done, or like here's like the future. Sarah is saying we can do up to 8 total people.
Oh,
Cool.
sweet.
Yes.
Okay.
And she also earlier comment was like, no worries, dogs are worth it.
Oh, thank God. I love them so much. Good.
Yeah, no, like we've had no, I'm not sure if this has happened on stream yet. Like I have lizards. This has happened in work calls before though. I have a bearded dragon. And so I've had my bearded dragon in the background before, and I've had people comment on that. I'm like, "Oh, I
I
forgot
love
I
it.
I left him out."
Yeah, these beautiful animals, reptiles, they really humanize when these virtual sessions.
Oh yeah.
So I love it. I think I was on a really high level panel once, and one of the people that was talking, her cat walked across her back, and she just kept going like nothing happened. And then the cat like literally sat in front of her, and then she had to like put the cat down, and then she just kept going. It was just really nice.
Oh my gosh. I love seeing like clips that have been on Twitter where it's like, oh, like just like people trying to act as like nothing is going on. You have like their kids like just like,
Oh yeah.
playing in the background, or like their dog is like doing something just like, yeah, they're like their professional like suit and tie. It's like, yeah, totally
No.
stone faced. Yeah, and
Yeah.
then and in today's news.
Exactly. Oh, I love it. Yeah, we
Yeah.
could do a blooper reel on that for sure. I love it. So,
Yes.
um, but yeah, I'll be in contact with you, and you'll be hearing from me a lot because I think you have. I think you would love to hear from some of these people that are doing great work, especially in California right now. I have some really good partners there.
Yeah, I would
So,
love to hear about California, and I'm actually moving up to Washington in February. So anything
okay,
for the whole like PNW California absolutely would be really cool. And I have a question from Sarah in the chat.
sure.
Um, she's asking, can you tell us about the status of the Alaskan and Yukon rivers navigating the new Arctic project?
Oh, nice. I wonder where she heard that from. I think it's on our website anyway. Um, but right now, that's my co-manager, Karen Cozzetto's like pet project. She's the lead on that one. But right now, what they're doing is they've created an Indigenous Advisory Council,
Ooh.
and yeah, and they're working closely with that. Just getting started on the calls, kind of going through the protocols on what the project. It's a hydrologic project. I don't really understand the hydrology side of it. They're taking like core samples from the Yukon
Ooh,
River
we love core
area,
samples.
and Yeah, and seeing how climate change is impacting the area, in riparian areas in that way, and then we're also putting that spin on it. We actually ITEP actually insisted that tribes, these communities, be involved, and thus the Indigenous Advisory Council was born. And right now we're just having meetings, but hopefully in about a year, maybe 2022, they're going to have an Arctic summit for
Oh.
people up in somewhere up maybe in Anchorage or Fairbanks, somewhere where they can actually gather and talk about and come together and talk about the project and what they learned and whatnot. So yeah, ITEP's helping heavily with the indigenous side of it. So
Yeah, no, I
okay.
would on that project if there's any time that you or like your coworkers, like or co-program manager, I think you said she is, would
Yeah.
love to come on and talk
Mhm.
about this. Absolutely.
Sure. Yeah, I'll propose it to her, and I think, yeah, it's becoming. I think when it gets a little bit stronger, meaning that when we have a little bit more to share, I think then it'll make a great episode for sure.
So excited. Okay. It's like, yes, like ideas are going like, all right, we can talk about this, and like all
I
these
know, I
updates.
love it.
Go ahead and like blast on social media, be like, yo, y'all, pay attention. Important.
Mhm. Sounds good.
Well, Sarah also saying, I too love a good core sample.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, we
Yeah, you and Karen get along.
yeah, we've
I like
done.
tree samples.
Ooh, oh, tree samples. We had who did we have? I had someone on that was talking about how they do like tree core samples. I think it was Joseph for the You Belong program.
Oh,
I think that might
nice.
have been
Yeah.
him because
Okay.
I made a joke about, or I think I said something about like the Arctic core samples because we've done a couple episodes about those. And he's like, "Oh well, I mean, I do tree samples," and I was like, "We should get a panel of of tree core people and ice core people, and like and like talk about whose cores are better."
Oh, that's awesome. I love it. That is such a forestry geek talk right there.
Yeah. Um,
I love
yeah, well, again, thank you so much for joining me, Nikki. I'll send you an email within like the next 24 to 48 hours with this episode. And again, if there's any segments that you want clipped out for specific social media purposes, just let me know.
Oh,
I'll go ahead and do that for you. Um, and yeah, thanks for taking time out of today
yes, of
to join
course.
me.
Thank you. Yeah, definitely. Thanks to you and Sarah. And I know that um I think Sarah, she's not the only one that was on the chat, huh? There's like were people listening in on this
Yeah, so
live? Okay.
Sarah's been chatting, and we currently have quite a few people lurking as well.
Oh
Let's
my
see.
God.
Trying to pull up my
So
dashboard, but
when the dog started barking and I left and it came back, it was all on there.
yes. But it's fine. Anything can happen
Okay.
with live streaming.
Oh my God. Like, okay. Okay. All right. Sounds good.
Yeah, we'll chop it out of the recording, so like it'll be like it never happened.
Okay.
So,
Yeah, that sounds good. Yeah, definitely. Well, I'll be in contact and I know that your friends in Washington are doing really well and I know they're safe, so but I'll keep them in my prayers and whatnot. So,
yes, yeah, well, been getting like text updates that they're actively avoiding well, now that curfew's in place, like they're in safe and not being in the rowdy spots, so that's good.
good.
But
Good.
yeah.
Wonderful. Well, thanks to everybody for watching and but thanks to you again and have a great evening.
Yeah, you too. Bye.
Okay. All right, bye-bye.
All right. Well, thank y'all for tuning in for today's episode of Climate EDU. I will see y'all tomorrow with our starting the book series with Eric Martin on democratizing leadership, or it's your leadership moment, democratizing leadership in the age of rising authoritarianism. It will be a uh, very good and very relevant discussion. I wish you all a fantastic rest of your Wednesday and be safe wherever you are. Check in with people. Just there's a lot, so please be safe. And look forward to seeing you all tomorrow.